to our Ready, Set, STEM virtual event. And we wanted to do this on this day for this month to celebrate National STEM Day coming up. And of course, we will be covering everything that we can regarding STEM. Now, another thing we want to kind of put in your mind as you're getting into this first session is our social media contest. You can win big in 3 easy steps. The first is your takeaway. What was a takeaway you had from your session in 15 words or more? And then posting that on either Instagram or Twitter, known as X, and including the hashtag #ReadySetMimioSTEM. And then please tag us as well to help us find your post. And if you do those 3 things, you will be entered into that media contest where you can either win the grand prize or we are going to pick 3 winners to take home some amazing STEM goodies. Your deadline is November 7th, so you got some time. But if you want to, you can just get your post done first thing in this first session. And if you are picked up one of our 3 winners, you can win one of these 6 prizes: a 10-pack PLA filament, 2 lab disc heart rate sensors, a MyBot floor mat of your choice for robotics, a MimioView document camera, a MySTEM Kids teacher plan, or a class set of pre-printed MySTEM Kids sailboats or ball-bearing catapults. Now, if you're the grand prize winner, there's one winner. You get to choose between 2 amazing products. You can either choose the Robo E3 that also includes the 10-pack of filament as well as a MySTEM Kids teacher plate, or you can choose the Lyric portable sound system. So those are the 2 grand prizes. But we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to jump into our first 2 sessions. So we're going to start with Kevin and Daniel.
Hey everyone, welcome. So this one's called Foundations of 3D Printing in Your Classroom. I've talked a lot about 3D printing over the years. I've been doing it for, I don't know, it's 2023 now. I want to say it started around 2016, 17. It's all kind of a blur anymore. It's just been a handful of years, and kids really appreciate the effort that goes into allowing them to make something. So I love using the hashtag Make It Happen, because I think that's something that's important for all of us teachers to do in the classroom to allow our students to express themselves and what they know. So first and foremost, you're in this room, you're giving up your time. Well, if you're like me in the Eastern time zone, it's after school hours. Could be hanging out with my family, friends, doing that stuff. But I love talking to educators, and I want to say thank you. You answered the call. We sure as heck don't do it for the money. I think we all can agree that we do it because we want to make this world a better place, and it all starts with building up our future through the children that are here. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You are all awesome. You don't get to hear it enough, but I appreciate everything you do on a day-to-day basis, week to week, month to month. They say there's a summer break, but we all know better. So thank you. A little bit about myself. This is my 16th year in education. I graduated from the school I actually work at. I graduated from Calvert Catholic Schools in Tiffin, Ohio. I went off to Heidelberg University, which is also in Tiffin, Ohio. But my parents did say, we don't care where you go to college, you're getting out of our house and spreading your wings. So I lived on campus. So whether I was in the same city or on the other side of the state or the country, I was on my own doing my thing. So I appreciate that my parents did that. After I graduated from Heidelberg, I got hired back at Calvert. Through those years while I was in college, I also coached wrestling at a few different levels. My thought was that I was going to go to college to become a social studies teacher so that I could be a wrestling coach. It kind of seems like you hear that a lot with people, especially coaches wanting to be social studies teachers. But it set me on a trajectory to find my true passion, which is educational technology and integrating it into the classrooms. I've been a teacher. I've been a coach for wrestling, baseball, golf, esports. I did for a couple years there. I love giving the kids the opportunity to grow as leaders and what that gives them in sports. I've been an advisor for student council, class levels. I've been a dean of students in the past before. So I've kind of been around all the different facets of education. And I think I can help give a perspective of a lot of things that. On the side, I run a blog, Teachers Tech Toolbox. Not very active on that. Do a podcast as well called Magic Potion UU. I am part of the Wired Educator Squad, I am an author of the book 3DU, and that was published by Kelly Croy and Wired Educator. If you need to get a hold of me afterwards, hit me up on Twitter is probably the best way. That's at Keven Rinaman. So let's get into it. This little dude right here. This is our 8-year-old son. His name is Cooper. He's my dude. He's our only child. But in this picture, he's 4 years old. And if you can tell there, he's working on Tinkercad. This was his second or third design that he did. And the reason I show this picture is I hear from teachers that they're like, well, I teach third grade. I don't think they can handle it. Or I teach kindergarten. Cooper was a preschooler. And I know my kid is kind of a different scenario having me as his dad and everything there. But I didn't really help him out all that much. He just got his Chromebook out. I helped him get to the website and I showed him where the stuff was. After that, he used the trackpad and he started making his own design. So all kids can do it if you give them the opportunity and you give them the building blocks to start making things. I have noticed that anytime you're doing an early on project where kids are getting started, they just like to put mustaches on things. So there's that little mustache going on the dude after he put the ice cream cone in his hand. So that's a classic right there. All right, so where do we begin? This is something I hear from teachers like, oh, we got a 3D printer, but now I don't know what to do with it. I don't want to break anything. So where do we get started? So my suggestion is typically, go online and find models that already exist and start printing them off so that you can understand how the 3D printer functions. That's going to give you basic troubleshooting as you go. Not that teachers need to be spending time troubleshooting. They got enough going on, but understanding all the different pieces and parts of a printer, you don't have to know them all in depth, but understanding what they do will help you in the future in being able to help students with their designs, knowing which way to orient the model before you go and print it and everything. So I would recommend going online and finding stuff that's interesting to you. So go with pop culture things. If you have like a superhero, like my boy and I were big into Spider-Man. We love the Spider-Man movies. So I would print something off like just a Spider-Man model. And then after it's printed and I know how, and I see how everything works, I can put that on my desk. Then when a new school year is starting and students are coming in and meeting me for the first time, if they're interested in Spider-Man and they see that on my desk, what's going to happen? I'm going to start facilitating rapport with these students before I even said a word to them. So I think that's the best place to start is to go get something that's of interest to you that you can then share with your students. So other ideas might be sports teams, various memorabilia for any sort of hobby or something that you have. Useful items that you can use around your class. Some of the first things I did was printing off iPhone cases. I didn't know what to print, so I just printed off an iPhone case because I just got a brand new iPhone at the time. Classroom manipulative. So if you have people doing math class type stuff, print it for that person down the hall, or maybe you are the math teacher, print some stuff off for them, or dice. Those are always handy to have, especially if you have students that are into Dungeons and Dragons. They'll appreciate all the various die that you can print off. One huge thing I'm going to recommend, and my friend Leah Lacrosse recommended this to me when I was getting started with 3D printing, have a fail box. This is just a simple cardboard box that you put underneath your printer, and if something doesn't work, don't throw it away, have them toss it in a fail box, the first attempt in learning. That way, when they need to come up with a design, hey, go check out the fail box. See if there's something in there that might be useful for what you're trying to make for a prototype, or just give you inspiration for something that you can design there. So every room that has a 3D printer should have a fail box. Okay, here's some examples. Leah, like I said, she is up at Huron. She's a middle school science teacher. She does some fantastic things. So years ago, her and I gave a presentation together. So I kind of hijacked some pictures from her classroom. So on the left-hand side, that is a mini shake table where she was working on explaining how earthquakes happen and everything. And so students would have to make a design for a house, try it out, and then they would shake the table and see how well their house stood up to it. She also does a ton with Sphero robots in her classroom. So she came up with these little medallions that she just tied ribbon onto that, if a kid does meets the criteria for the challenge, hey, they go home with one of these medallions. You can use that for any classroom, and there's always some sort of award you can come up with. And kids just love those tangible things. One of the things I did in my classroom was I did a lot of breakout EDU, had the kids go in small groups and everything. So I took their logo, the lock logo, and printed it out on the 3D printer. I made sure to use gold filament because that really brought it home. So whichever group was able to break out first on my breakout days, that everybody in that group got one of those locks. And it became a contest to who can get the most over the course of the school year. So little things like that you can print off. They don't take a ton of time. They help you understand how the thing works, and they garner interest with your students. They get them engaged in the classroom. So I highly recommend anytime you can come up with something that can be used as an award, run with it. All right, let's get started with designing. If this was like a 2-hour workshop, I would actually take you through going on Tinkercad and how to make your first design, but we don't quite have that amount of time here today. But this is kind of the first simple design that I do with any sort of PD that I'm doing, as well as a lot of times I'll do this with like older students. Really, I can do it with younger students too. It's going through and looking at how all the various planes and all the various geometric shapes work inside of Tinkercad. So I highly recommend using this as a starter project for your students. Even if you're not printing them off for anybody, it helps them understand holes versus solids and how to adjust. Well, actually, Tinkercad made that easier for adjusting which plane you're on and everything there. But we would start with just a square or a cube, I guess. We would drop it in there. I'd smush it down, make it maybe a 1/4 inch tall or 1/3 of an inch tall, stretch it out all the way, get it to a size that I like, and have all the students doing all that. Then I would take the roof shape and teach the kids how to raise up that elevation, make sure it's put on top of that smushed cube. And then we would work on putting in their name. When I had a class of freshmen, one of them for their Genius Hour projects, wanted to make them for all the teachers, just simple nameplates. So they kind of took off with this idea and made it their own. And they wanted to make one for every single teacher I was involved. So that was pretty cool. So after I go through and teach the students how to do this, then we go and we get another cube, smash it down to be the same height, make it a little bit smaller, but then we drop in a cylinder. Here's where you can then talk about edges and beveling and everything there. So after you make one cylinder, you go and duplicate it, make it a little bit smaller. You align them so they're centered together, and you make the one on the inside a hole, and then voila, you have a little cup holder or a pencil holder or whatever it's going to be there. So this project is, you can usually get kids, it takes me about half hour, 45 minutes maybe, to go through this and walk around and work with the students one-on-one. But it's great for them to understand how all the different parts of Tinkercad function. Other starter ideas. You can go out and there's tons of websites that have various lesson plan ideas. Coming up with items for your classroom, like hall passes or the medals I was talking about, or stuff to say happy birthday, decorations for the classroom. Getting started with basic integration in any content area, to me, symbolism is key. For this example, I had my students being at a Catholic school, our 8th graders go through the sacrament of confirmation, and one of the things they do is pick a saint that they want to live their life like, and they need to pick a symbol that represents that saint. So somebody picks St. Patrick. What kind of symbol are they going to use? Most likely a 3-leaf clover. So we're just using a basic cylinder here. They put their symbol on there. We teach them how to rotate a cylinder and again, make a hole, put it sideways. And just like that, they've just made a medallion that they can use as a keychain or as a necklace or something along those lines. So you could make bookmarks if you're in ELA classes, have the students figure out a symbol that works for the book that you're reading and print off bookmarks for the next school year. I've heard some teachers having great success making their own sort of coins. Maybe it has the teacher's face on it, but they use it as a classroom currency. Maybe it's for PBIS type stuff that you're doing. Medallions, like I had stated, ornaments. I'm big into Christmas. I've already been listening to Christmas music since September and wearing my Santa socks. So probably tomorrow or Friday, the Christmas trees are going to go up in my office and in my classroom. But having students design their own Christmas ornaments is another great way for them to get the basic understanding of how 3D printing works. And timelines are another great thing. Every classroom has some sort of timeline that they're going to be going over. All right, one of my favorite things to do with 3D printing is customization and personalization. I've seen people that are building houses with the 3D printing technology now, and they're even going and printing off their own shoes so they can customize their shoes as they're growing and their feet are getting bigger. For my example, one of the projects that we like to do every single year with our 8th graders is we go visit Washington, D.C. So I like to take the 8th graders, take the itinerary that we have to go on that trip and break them up into small groups. So somebody's going to be in charge of doing research. Somebody's going to be the spokesperson or the influencer, as so many students want to be these days. Somebody's going to be the architect that's going to make the 3D design, and then somebody's going to have to make some sort of presentation, whether it's a Word document or a slideshow or a video. One time I had a group that wanted to make a video where they were pretending to be bus drivers and they were explaining what they were seeing through the window. So that was super cool to see it happen. But what we do is we use Tinkercad to have these students pick out one of the memorials or monuments they're going to, and then they're going to recreate the model on Tinkercad, and we print it off. Then we make them basically to fit in the size of your hand, and they all usually take around 3 hours to print, so you definitely need to do this ahead of time. We put them in a box, take them on the bus, and every time we stop at one of those monuments, memorials, what have you, that group gets out and gets their picture taken in front of it. To me, that's much more meaningful than that $65 USA hoodie that's going to end up with a mustard stain on it, and they're going to grow out of it within a couple months anyways. So that's one of my favorite projects. Along those same lines, you could make a Mount Rushmore in your classroom. Whatever content area you're doing, you can always come up with 4 or 5 famous people that were integral to that content area or whatever time period you are studying. So have the students come up with their own Mount Rushmore and make that.
Just want to chime in real quick and just let you know you have 5 minutes left.
All right, my next one, probably the most important, is solving a problem. Finding something in the school or the community where students can use their knowledge to solve the issue at hand. We've got a handful of examples of things that we've done at our school, and this is one of them. My elementary administrative assistant had a door buzzer that kept falling down because there was no stand for it. So she asked me to come and measure it. We made it. We again put the cup holder on there and everything. And here's an example of a student that saw that I had an issue because I had no tray for my dry erase marker. So they learned how to use digital calipers and figure out the size. And they made the one on the left as their first one that didn't have holes for screws. They just used adhesive and it fell down. So then they made number 2. In Leah's class, there was a drinking fountain right in the hallway that had this jagged looking button to push down. So kids never use it because it hurt their hands. So their students took it upon themselves to help make the school a better place, and they designed their own little button. One of the really cool things that I've seen is that the International Space Station has a 3D printer, so they needed a ratchet wrench. So they just sent the file up there, and then it was printed. How much time and money did that save, not having to send it up there? But what really gets me is this article's from 2014.
Test.
Been around for quite a while. All right, one of my favorite stories is this young lady. We're running low on time, so I'm not going to go through everything. Her story. Her name is Haley Lawson. She has total syndrome. And so she was born missing part of her hands, part of her fingers, and everything. And she loves baseball. She's actually the first person to throw out the first pitch at all 30 Major League Baseball stadiums, including at the World Series a few years ago. My family and I are huge Cleveland baseball fans. We go in with some people and some season tickets. And in 2018, the first game we went to, she was actually throwing out the first pitch at the game. So I was bringing my love of baseball, the 3D printing together, and it was just a cool moment. You can see here, you can kind of see the small part of her fingers in there. So UNLV's engineering department was making these hands for her. And every time she went to a new stadium, they made a new one for her with the team logo and got autographed by everybody. She's actually in the Baseball Hall of Fame with her hand that she used for the Baltimore Orioles. So if your students really want to build empathy, they can actually make hands for kids all across the world that are in similar situations. Here's a few different websites, such as Enabling the Future and Hand Challenge, that would allow you to connect your classroom to do such a thing. And as an example, another thing my students did was we had one of our teachers actually had a cancerous growth on her thumb and had to have the top of it amputated. And my students wanted to try and build their own prosthetic. Unfortunately, COVID happened and we never finished that project, unfortunately, but I just absolutely love the fact that my students wanted to go that far. And with that, that takes us to the end.
Thank you, everybody. That was our first session. Thank you to our two presenters. And for the folks that are coming back into the main room, let us know in the chat, what were some of your biggest takeaways or highlights from your last session? We have folks saying they love the ideas using 3D printers, a lot of great ideas. So let us know in the chat what stood out to you as we get ready for our next two sessions.